when you have that much volatility, I disagree that the big hedge funds will get involved in this when you have a 30% volatility swing each direction. So from peak to trough and back up again, down and up again, no investor wants to tolerate that kind of volatility, and how can you manage that kind of volatility becomes very difficult. So are the hedge funds and the banks going to jump in head first up at these levels? Probably not. If we get a bit more stability into these markets, you'll see more investment. But also, from that risk-reward perspective, you've also got to keep in mind that this is a non-regulated market. That's the attractiveness from people. Right. But governments have overreach, like we're seeing in the media right now. The deep state runs America. They're trying to rewrite history here with these statue wars, and that's always a dangerous time. So if too many people get on the Bitcoin train and get on the crypto train, the government could come in one day and say it's illegal in this country, we're cracking down on everybody. Because right now when you open up an account, they demand the KYC, know your customer information, and they will, when it becomes bigger, they will try to regulate it and they will try to control it. It's difficult for the government to let anything come out of its grasp. The Federal Reserve prints willy-nilly trillions and trillions of dollars since we went off the gold standard, backed by nothing. Now this is a Ponzi scheme. The government, and that's what my book is about, the government debt globally is a Ponzi scheme. The governments can never repay this debt, and we're about to hit a wall. So should people invest in alternative asset classes? Absolutely. Is a Leonardo da Vinci painting worth $500 million? Is an apartment in Midtown Manhattan worth $600 million? I would argue no, it's not.
I would agree.
Tuition prices from when I went to university have gone up 2,000%,
yep.
Where real wages since the 1980s are flat. Right. So how does that work out? When I got out of school, I could have bought a two-bedroom apartment on Park Avenue.
Let me jump in here. Gentlemen, I have to go to a break, and after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on Bitcoin. Stay with our team. We're discussing Bitcoin. Let me go back to you in Cambridge. While it is a fascinating concept, these cryptocurrencies, there is the concern of accountability. Illegal drugs, arms, and other kinds of illegal activity can stay under the radar of the authorities. I think that's a kind of a downside. Also, when people talk about it as being a new fiat currency one day, people are buying big-ticket items because they are avoiding taxation and things like that. It kind of cuts both ways here. I guess really the most important question will be, if this kinds of cryptocurrencies are successful, what is the temptation of governments to step in to regulate it, and would regulation kill it? Go ahead.
Right. It's been very interesting to watch the migration of regulatory interest across this space. First we had law enforcement with the rise of the Silk Road and the online dark web, its use of Bitcoin, taking interest in the sector. More recently, securities regulators, and with the upswing in prices, I'm sure tax authorities are kind of next in line to start getting involved. With regards to the law enforcement question, it's a double-edged sword for law enforcement, because on the one hand, these currencies do enable privacy on dark web transactions, but on the other hand, law enforcement, when they catch a criminal who's been using Bitcoin and they get a hold of their wallet software, they get effectively their books, and they may have a good chance of recovering some of the funds. And that's not something you get with a cash criminal, where there isn't record keeping. So you can use the blockchain to prosecute cases, and that has been done. And law enforcement, I think, at least in some jurisdictions, is steadily becoming more open to seeing crime committed with blockchain technology. It does give them an advantage over cash crime.
Okay, it's a very transparent technology. That's an amazing plus for it. Jeffrey, earlier this week there was a San Francisco judge putting pressure on a company that trades in these commodities and these currencies here. They want to see their books, they want to see names, they want to see transactions here. What kind of threat is that to Bitcoin, or can Bitcoin evolve with this kind of supervision and regulation from the outside? Because my sense is, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, the people that started this whole thing don't like the state, they don't like authority, they really want to be on their own here. We're going to see an encroachment on this, on these kinds of currencies and alternative financial mechanisms. Go ahead.
The regulation of the exchanges began in the spring of 2013. So far as I'm concerned, it was a disaster. We would have been much further along without these regulations. This is the main way that government can control Bitcoin. It's not actually controlling Bitcoin. What they're doing is controlling the traffic between national monies and crypto assets coming and going. They can control that. And the U.S. has some of the worst regulations in the world on crypto assets right now, on these exchanges.
Well, why is that? Jeffrey, why is that?
Markets are global.
Why is that? Why is that situation exist in the U.S.?
Well, because the regulators are trying to force a modern digital technology into an analog, old world style regulatory framework, and it's not working. And all it's doing is driving the innovation out of this country and to other places. You can buy Bitcoin much easier in a place like Israel than you can in the United States or in Brazil. I've been to exchanges all over the world. Most of them are very free and easy, and there's a lot of entrepreneurship there. In the U.S., it's all about command and control. It's a huge mistake for American regulators to be taking this direction, because they're just going to drive the innovation and the capital outside the borders. Bitcoin and crypto assets in general are global technologies. They don't care about the nation state.
Okay, Mitch, address that issue there, because, the almighty dollar, it's a threat to, Bitcoin and all these other things are a threat to the global domination of the dollar. It's obviously something the U.S. doesn't want to have happen.
Right. We're talking about U.S. dollar hegemony. And, my view is the days of U.S. dollar hegemony are very limited. Look, before the United States became the reserve currency, I think in 1913, when they created the Federal Reserve, which is a disaster that should be shuttered, British sterling was the reserve currency for 300 years.
One coin, cryptocurrency. One coin, guys.
The gold standard in the Nixon era, I would argue no. I would argue that this has caused market distortion. I would argue that the central bank policies in the last 10 years have been more destructive than the good that they've provided, because I don't see that we've created growth for the trillions of dollars in debt that we've created. Now, as we saw in the last administration in Washington, big government is in right now. So our government is gargantuan, and they want overreach with everything in every part of people's lives in America. And to do that, if you get an iron fist on the banking system and make people take away cash, like one of the professors at Harvard wrote a book to get rid of all cash, make people put their money into the bank. This is a very dangerous thing. That's why people are migrating to other platforms. So we're at a point in time in history that could be very pivotal as to how we move forward with this. But the media is controlled, and if you look at regulation, they don't regulate companies like Amazon that dips their fingers into everything in every different business, or Facebook or Google that have become oligarchies, and basically they're controlling the content that everybody sees. And this is where the regulatory agency should be looking, not to control people's currency movements or whether they want to buy gold or invest a bit in Bitcoin. They should look at controlling the Facebooks, the Googles, and looking at the news entities, because news in this country has become opinion and political advocacy. Yeah. And this is a way for the liberal left to rewrite history, which is extremely dangerous. If we look, Mark Thompson, who ran BBC during the Jimmy Savile pedophile scandal, snuck out of London and came to run the New York Times. And people forget about history and where people are and how they move around, but the same establishment figures are running things. Well, 160 companies used to control the media, now it's down to 6.
Yeah. One of the things I'm in Cambridge, one of the things I find appealing about Bitcoin, and I can't say that I'm an expert on it by a long shot, it seems to promote entrepreneurship, which I think is a really good thing. Again, people that want to get out of the system, away from the system, away from regulation. Is it fair to say that these cryptocurrencies would be good for innovation?
I think absolutely. I don't think anyone doubts that, and I think actually, I think people can argue about how bad the regulation is, but in certain markets, there's been a very pro-cryptocurrency attitude because of the innovative aspects of it, and people are taking a much lighter touch in Switzerland and in the UK even and elsewhere because of the amount of investment that's coming in, because of the faster, cheaper, better ways we can do things with this technology.